right, greetings. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected. And talking about climate change news of the day. We're going to do it live. Do it live. Do it live. We are live on Rockfin. Got people in the chats on Rockfin already. Greetings, Rockfin, Bill Gabriel, Laura Neufeld, Abel Trencherman, William. Greetings, guys. Let's get more people on Rockfin. I kind of missed doing the Rockfin exclusive stream this week, but I probably will do one coming up very soon. So please get yourself prepared to watch on Rockfin. I will be doing more Rockfin only live streams fairly soon. And Poppy, glad to hear that you have power back. That's good to know. It's good to know. I'm sure people will slowly kind of be digging out from this for a while. Still ongoing, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. But first, whoop, did my button not work? Sir? Or maybe I just didn't press the button. Got to press it harder. That's what she said. Anyways, we're back in the Paris Agreement. Apparently, we are back in the agreement, huh? Today's the day we're officially back in the Paris Agreement again, part of the global climate effort, says Special Presidential Envoy John Kerry. No country can fight this fight on its own, said John Kerry. We look forward to a productive year and a successful COP26 in Glasgow. Good to be back, hashtag good to be back. Special Envoy John Kerry. There's some good tweets to him right below. I believe this Gulfstream Aerospace jet registered to Flying Squirrel LLC belongs to you, Mr. Climate Envoy. Touché. Someone else says, well, sir, we are a little country, Ireland, and we have done more for climate change than the biggest, richest countries. So it's about time you all pull up your socks and get more done. Pull up your socks. I like that. That's good. Somebody said, make sure to ask Texas if they want in. They want to seed from America. The tweets are funny. Oh, this is a good one. The U.S. military is a bigger polluter than more than 100 countries combined, somebody says. But this is from Boston DSA. Now start cutting emissions. True story. What does being back in the Paris Climate Agreement really mean? What does it actually mean? Somebody says Paris Agreement is very disgusting. USA cut emissions. China, Russia, India have not. Global elites fly around in their own private carbon footprint jets. Very hypocritical. It drags America down. Okay. Anyways. Somebody says it's freezing cold and this whole gambit is merely to trade climate options. It's not going to do shite. Yeah, and I think that people are justifiably pessimistic about what the Paris Agreement is actually going to do for climate change. I mean, You can see it from many different sides. On one level, just acknowledging that there's a climate crisis or that climate change is real. Yes, that's a step in the right direction. Just acknowledging climate change is something, and it's something that everybody wants. It's something. It's better than nothing. It's better than climate change. What's that? It's better than that. And all that is very true. But as seen by the projections by the IPCC itself, the projections of the IPCC on its own, and they're not really very good projections. Any climate scientist worth their salt will tell you that the projections from the IPCC are very conservative, and that they don't include things like methane. They're leaving a lot of information out of the models. The fact that the Paris Agreement was entered into with the input of fossil fuel companies to make sure that they were given a lot of leeway to keep on doing what they do for a while. There's a lot of criticisms. I think they're fair criticisms of the Paris Agreement. And hopefully, people will start realizing this sooner than later. I mean, what we have to do is get beyond the Paris Agreement. Like, it's not enough to just say, yes, climate change is real. Oh, we're back in the Paris Agreement. It's a real thing, and we've got to do something. We got to go beyond even just that very elementary, very, very preliminary step in order to really get at some very tough choices and tough realities that people are going to have to face in the coming years due to climate change. And people, it's not even in the coming years. We're already, again, and it's said over and over again, we are already experiencing the effects of climate change. People are already being displaced. People are being frozen like popsicles in Texas due to climate change. People are being burned out of their homes in California due to climate change. People are, leaving their countries of origin due to climate change. People are being having their food supplies being disrupted, climate change. Experiencing, warm weather that they cannot survive, climate change. Climate change is already impacting people to their detriment, and it's happening right now. It's already happening. The change is already occurring. We're already in climate change. And I think that's another thing, too, is this whole, climate change is this big looming threat in the future that we have to somehow avoid, this wall of climate change, the wall of climate change that's coming at us. It's already happening. It's already here. It's already affecting people's lives. It's already changing how people have to approach life. And it's going to do that to a greater and greater degree as time goes forward. So it would be really good if more truth were spoken about this, more information was given on this, more people could become aware of this. It would be really good if that could happen, so that at the very least, even if you can't avoid it, or you can't change it, or you can't fix it, or it's kind of late, and it is kind of late, even if all of those things are true, at least people can be, apprised of the situation. At the very least. TCR says, we're still in the talk about things stage. Kevin, addicts voluntarily giving up insane privilege isn't really a thing at this point. But when addicts find themselves at a crossroads in life, or find themselves at a point at which it is the decision to stop using or to keep using is a life or death decision. And very soon that's, people are being confronted with life or death choices in Texas right now. Or a life or death situation in Texas right now. And the tragedy, the real tragedy of it all is it's not being relayed. The information, to some extent, people are trying to relay this as, yes, this is a climate change, an effect of climate change. This is a climate change event. And hopefully those voices are going to get louder and louder. But, that's the thing, is that we're going to have to look at this in a way in which, this is already happening and is going to keep continuing. There's no, getting off the climate change highway. There's no getting off the 2C highway. There's none of that. There's none of that going on, and that's not going to happen. So people need to be aware that things like this are going to continue to happen on a regular basis, and it's going to get worse as the years go on. So what are you going to do in the face of this? This isn't, doom. That's not doomerism. That's not pessimism. That's not being mean or being weird or kind of out there. It's none of those things. That is just reality. That's just the reality of the situation. And it's being kind and fair and communicative to people, like, look, this is going to happen. It's going to keep happening. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse for people and their everyday lives and their ability to, have any kind of sense of normalcy. This is going to start to fade away. Normalcy is going to start to fade away for a lot of people due to climate change. That's not being doomer. That's not being pessimistic. Again, it's not, it's just an uncomfortable reality that people are going to have to take in and eventually accept or not. Don't accept it to your detriment. If you don't accept reality, you do that to your detriment every single time. Every single time people refuse to accept reality or deny reality, you do so at your detriment. You do so at the cost, either in the near or the far future of your life or the lives or the livelihood of people around you. So accept it or don't. That's pretty much, it doesn't really have to be any more complicated than that. Michelle says, climate change will not manifest as one event. It will be multiple events happening one after the other and at the same time. So a pandemic and a polar vortex right after multiple hurricanes. Sure. Interglacial Optimist says, in the last 5 days, I have found 35 ways not to germinate a bamboo seed. Okay. Success. Ross Cobbin, yes, denialism does not die easy. And, there are so many ways that people can be in denial about this. And it's unfortunate, it's sad, it's frustrating. But it's, it is the human condition to be in denial. Plenty of people are in denial about all kinds of things. We all, to varying degrees, live in states of denial. And so, you're not bad, you're not stupid, you're not evil, you're not, to live in denial. It's just that if you, none of those things are true. But it is unfortunate, and it at some point gets to be, you get to be a danger to yourself and to others, depending on your level of denial. Poppy Davis, thank you for the super ray on Rockfin. Amanda Staniforth, thank you for the super ray on Rockfin. You guys are awesome. We've got 18 people watching on Rockfin. That's good. Let's get more. Let's get more. Rockfin is the new place to be, my friends. Let me tell you, every single day I'm on Rockfin, the more I like it. I enjoy it. I think you will too. Get on a web browser. Just get on a web browser. If it doesn't work on your phone or if you can't find an app, just go to a web browser. Everybody has one on their phone these days. Go to rockfin.com and watch it there. That's how I watch Rockfin on my phone. I don't use the app. I just go to a web browser and I type in rockfin.com and I just watch videos there. Irk1 says, if honesty were suddenly introduced to American society, the whole system would collapse. Kiwi Bear Muzza, what's going on? Oh, that was a quote from George Carlin, by the way. Kiwi Bear Muzza, everybody say hello to Kiwi Bear Muzza. Do not denial the thumb up chat. Thanks. That's good, Poppy. That's good. All right. This won't be Rockfin app. Phone app is in beta testing. Okay. Yeah, I have the Rockfin phone app on my phone. I don't generally use it. I just go to the web browser and it works totally fine. It's just like watching a video on a web browser. Kind of like what you do on a computer. So yeah, let's look at this story from The Guardian. California and Texas are warnings. Oh, Siri, I'm not talking to you. California and Texas are warnings. Blackouts show U.S. deeply unprepared for the climate crisis. Well, thank you, Guardian, for spelling it out in a headline. Deeply unprepared for a climate crisis. And, you know, we can't prepare fast enough. We cannot prepare fast enough. If this situation in Texas hasn't made it abundantly clear, if the wildfires in California over the last 3 years or 4 years in a row, every single year are getting worse and worse, if that hasn't made it abundantly clear that something is wrong, this is a trend, not an anomaly. When California saw widespread power blackouts last year during the wildfires and a summer heat storm, Republican lawmakers from Texas were quick to deride the coastal state's energy policies. California is now unable to perform even basic functions of civilization, like having reliable electricity, tweeted Senator Ted Cruz during the record-breaking heat wave in August. Those Republicans, including Cruz, had to swallow the words this week as a massive winter storm took out the Lone Star State's power grid, leaving nearly 4 million people without electricity and heat amid polar temperatures. Crises in California and Texas are different in scale and severity. One faced fire, the other an ice storm, but experts say the power outages in both states make one thing clear: neither is prepared for the chaos of the climate crisis. Again, this is just, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. We could do the blaming and the name calling and the we could do all that kind of stuff. That's fine, but it really at the end of the day, it is just really unfortunate that we didn't come to grips with this a lot sooner. And now it's going to start getting into emergency. We're in emergency mode, and very few people even understand we're in emergency mode, and that's how bad it is. Over the past 2 decades across the United States, severe weather has been the main cause of sustained power outages. We're already seeing the effects of climate change, says Sasha Van Meer, professor of electrical engineering at the University of California, Berkeley. There will be more of this, and it will get worse. real talk. So they just go on to talk about the power grid and infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. I'm not, all of that is important on some level, sure. Infrastructure and the power grid, but it's, there are deeper forces at play. Deeper forces and deeper things to consider than infrastructure and power grids. The infrastructure of human beings, of human beings as a species is broken and needs to be upgraded quickly. Again, I'm going to read this little, probably something I should have read yesterday, but whatever. The finger pointing at the situation in Texas is somewhat amazing. Again, this is your world on climate change, and as it gets worse, finger pointing will become a professional sport. The rich, the politicians, the oil companies, the scientists, the poor, white people, Americans, Chinese, Trump, everyone will be responsible for climate change. And, it's not a lot of good that is going to do. I mean, yes, there are culprits, there are bandits that we should, probably concentrate on eliminating soon, like billionaires and trillionaires and, corporate planetary raiders. But, there are so many culprits in the mix that it's, you could really point a finger at anybody. I mean, we have to do this collectively somehow. Somehow collectively we have to shift our consciousness. Collectively we are responsible for climate change. Shitty people made shitty decisions and a lot of people went along with it. That's really what happened. A lot of people were just like, okay, I don't know if that's a good idea, but you guys are in charge, whatever. There's a lot of blame. A lot of blame. Evil people can only do evil things because people let them. So which gets into a deeper philosophical argument about who's really evil. The people that know that they can take advantage of people, or the people that let themselves be taken advantage of. There's really no point in trying to place blame at this juncture. Collectively, we are in for a very bumpy ride. The best we can do is tell people the truth and get very resilient, very local. And that's why, the whole infrastructure thing, okay, sure. But the deeper root, the deeper cause is, this entire growth paradigm that we live in. So if we want to give up the growth paradigm, or at least see it for the culprit that it is, then you have to understand that, rebuilding America's infrastructure is probably not as important as getting people to be resilient on their own, right? And the thing that runs into, the barrier that runs into, is that we live in an economy, a growth paradigm, a capitalist paradigm in which, we're supposed to buy more things and consume more things and have more things and buy more things. This entire economy is built on that. So if you tell people, be very resilient, live off grid, fend for yourself, live off the land, live in harmony with nature, none of those things can be commodified, or a lot less of that can be commodified. You're basically encouraging people to pull themselves out of the system that you want everybody hooked into. So, infrastructure, yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, let's worry about that. But let's also worry about the fact that the infrastructure itself is part of the problem. The infrastructure is, on some levels, the problem. But anyways, I encourage people to get very resilient and very local. Do the things we will have to do to counteract climate change. And these are the same things we will be forced to do to survive, right? If the infrastructure goes down in Texas. The infrastructure failed in Texas. How do you survive? Well, if you're not dependent on the infrastructure, if you're resilient, homesteading, living off grid, fending for yourself, raising a lot, canning and growing your own food and canning your own food and having supplies on hand and living in that way, well then you're able to survive. Those are the things that people are going to be forced to do to survive in the future. So you can either do it. Again, it's one of those cases where you could do it willingly or you could be forced to do it. In the end, everybody's going to end up doing this anyways. So, beat the crowd. So get on it, go forward. That's about all we have. That's what humans do anyways, until they don't. More news out of Texas. This is a disaster. This is from today, this morning, Guardian. It goes on and on. A lot of people have regained power, but there are still widespread problems of food and water being scarce. Food banks in Texas have gone into a disaster mode as they ramp up operations to tackle a surge in hunger after unprecedented freezing conditions disrupted almost every part of the food supply chain in the state. Again, do I have to point it out? Again, food supply chains will be impacted by infrastructure going down. And it's going to happen wherever a climate disaster happens. So the way to really prepare for that is not to be dependent on this food supply chain. Grocery stores are empty, school meal programs suspended, deliveries disrupted by untreated, treacherous roads that have left millions of Texans trapped in precarious living conditions with dwindling food supplies. Even those who did stockpile before the Arctic conditions swept in have lost refrigerated groceries due to lengthy power cuts and cannot cook what food they do have without electricity or gas. In the worst affected areas, food banks and pantries were forced to close for several days this week, as it was impossible for staff and vehicles to get to the distribution sites. Relief was limited to disaster boxes sent to people seeking refuge in warming shelters. On Thursday, the disruption to energy and safe water supplies had food banks scrambling to procure large quantities of bottled water and ready meals and snacks that do not require cooking. This is a disaster. We are doing rapid needs assessments so we can get appropriate food to those people quickly. When everything thaws, we're preparing for a massive spike in demand, said Valerie Hawthorne, Director of Government Relations at North Texas Food Bank, based in Dallas. This has been the longest week of all of our lives. Before the big freeze, this food bank ran 2 drive-through food distribution sites every day, serving between 300 and 1,500 families at each pop-up location. This week, they were all canceled, though one is planned Saturday, leaving thousands of families without enough food or reliant on relatives, neighbors, and mutual aid groups. Hunger was a serious problem in Texas even before the pandemic and the latest weather disaster, with about 4.3 million Texans struggling with hunger in 2019, including 1 in every 5 children. COVID triggered an economic crisis that led to a demand for food aid doubling in many parts of Texas amid record unemployment and underemployment levels. Almost 2/5 of Americans do not have enough cash or savings to cope with an unexpected $400 expense, such as burst pipes or collapsed roof, according to research by the Federal Reserve. Long lines extend outside grocery stores with empty shelves, and water supplies have been disrupted by boil advisories and burst pipes. Electricity is needed for those in rural areas with private wells. In Dallas, 87% of school children live in low-income households. Thousands depend on free school meals, with some receiving 4 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and a snack, and dinner, but many schools were unable to offer any this week due to power cuts, burst pipes, water advisories, and shortages. At the other end of the food chain, fruit and vegetable crops in the Rio Grande Valley have been ruined by the extreme cold. Dairy farmers across the state are pouring millions of dollars of milk down the drain because they cannot get it to dairies. The drop in production could have short and medium-term consequences on availability and prices. This is affecting everything. Scientists have long warned that global heating is causing extreme weather events to become more frequent and intense and to strike in places unaccustomed to and ill-equipped to deal with extreme heat or freezing temperatures. The disruption to food supplies in Texas shows how poorly prepared the U.S. is to deal with the climate crisis, according to Molly Anderson, director of the Food Studies program at Middlebury College in Vermont. What we see in Texas demonstrates a lack of planning for resilience and a failure to recognize that climate weirding is here and that it's already impacting the food chain, she said. This is truly a serious disaster. A serious disaster on top of how many disasters have we seen, climate-related disasters have we seen over the last 5 years? So many. Poppy Davis says Texas is going to get more Arctic weather as well as sweltering summers. Indeed. Laura Neufeld says last year's hail comes and ruins crops and gardens several times a season, unheard of growing up. Yeah. It is a different regime. Jay Thadcast, keep waiting for 125-degree summers. Indeed. Yeah. And I keep thinking that and saying that to people. I mean, we've hit 120 degrees the last few summers straight, or close to 120 in some places in Southern California. But, you know, what happens when we start hitting 125, 130? Or what happens if you get 115 for 3 or 4 days straight? I mean, that's just murder. Again, power grids can't survive that. That's when things start breaking down. Anyways, moving on. Catherine Hayhoe demonstrating why we're having this issue. And you know what the source of this issue. The Arctic is 10 to 15 C degrees above normal right now. Oh, and I forgot to load something else I wanted to show you guys. So we see this massive polar air, a mass of polar air over the United States. Here, it should be up here, and what's up here is lots and lots of heat. Again, simply put, Arctic amplification, Arctic warming is pushing out the cold air from where it should be into, other areas. And that is that. Hold on one second. Let me see. I forgot to put this guy in here. Choo-choo. Can you all see that? Arctic sea ice extent. Look at that dip. This is from Osama. Let me put it up on the Rockfin. Or is that on Rockfin? It is on Rockfin. Sorry. Uh, you guys should be able to see this very shortly. Yeah, this is Arctic sea ice extent. Look at that drop in February, mid-February. If you wonder, why is it so cold down here? Why is it so warm in the Arctic? Why? I say why. Lastly, again, climate change affecting the normalcy of people's lives, food supplies in many parts of the world. This is from February 8th. Fighting for life, Bangladesh shrimp farmers destitute in wake of cyclone. So here's, another quote unquote natural disaster on the other side of the planet that is affecting people's ability to live. Natural disaster compounded by the collapse of a lucrative export during the pandemic has thrust people into poverty. Bangladesh shrimp farmers destitute in wake of cyclone. This time last year, the west coast of Bangladesh was a thriving place for shrimp farmers. It was a decent enough living, and there was a healthy export market. The shrimp farm was underwater. So after Cyclone Amphan came through, the shrimp farm was underwater for 9 months. 3 to 4 feet of silt has accumulated there. Everything on the farm is ruined. Now a lot of money is needed to fix these again. So this is one farmer says, I'm carrying a burden of debt. Where can I get money for shrimp farming? Up to 70% of the 300,000 shrimp farmers in Khulna and the neighboring districts of Satkhira and Bagarhat ran small businesses, leasing land and selling for export, a trade that ended with the COVID-19 lockdown. About 80% of the export orders for shrimp, worth about $54 million, were canceled between July and December last year. The drop in exports saw local shrimp prices more than halve. That came just weeks after Amphan, the fiercest storm to hit the region this century, destroyed boats and equipment. This is causing a lot of trouble, to say the least. Muslima Begum, a 36, a shrimp farmer from Koira, Upazila, used to earn a living wage. Now she's dependent on any work her husband, Mosharraf Hossein, can find. We have never faced such a crisis before, she says. I've lost about 1 lakh taka, more than 800 pounds. I am in debt. Shrimp will not be cultivated this year. I don't know how the day will go. It's now very difficult to provide food for 5 members of the family. Before I got nutritious food from the vegetable garden near the house, everything was destroyed in the cyclone. Now everything has to be bought from the market. Again, climate change, destroying people's lives and livelihood and ability to eat. Now with the high price of products in the market, it is not possible for us to buy everything like before. And that, more evidence of climate change destroying the fabric of life as people know it. Yeah, that is unfortunate indeed. Well, guys, yeah, the graph is incredibly scary. Laura Neufeld, definitely. More methane craters every month. Yeah. All right, guys, that's about all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I will be back tomorrow at the regular time. I will be doing a neorealism on Rockfin exclusively in about 20 minutes. Couple things to talk about. And if you guys want to talk about some political stuff, I'll see you guys there. Until next time, peace.